but I'm Bonnie Leach. Excuse me, sorry.
Jim?
Yeah.
I had just heard someone had called in on a radio show to say that Cox Cable is now offering a lifetime membership, one fee.
I will talk about cable costs. A lot of them are very deceptive.
They don't know what the fee is yet, but it's a one-time charge for your life. Depends how old you are.
I'd be suspicious if that was real or not.
But. That's what Cox Cable had posted to them.
Yeah.
It's pretty amusing.
Would you mind if we record the series here?
You're welcome to.
Good.
The jokes get really stale though.
All right. Well. So how do I do that? I see the record button and it says, you please ask permission. So do you have to?
It's possible. I think the library is the only one, the host is the only one that can actually do the recording.
I'm recording it right now.
Yeah.
All right, so I can't record.
That'll be recorded. It'll be available to you folks after I'm done going blah, blah, blah. You'll be able to play it all back.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, there it is.
Okay, Jim, we'll wait one more minute and then we can start, okay? Okay, everybody, we're going to start. What we'll do is I'll just admit people as they get into the waiting room. I'm just going to ask you all to mute yourselves until we can ask questions, because sometimes we get a lot of feedback and background noise. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. And when he opens up the floor for questions, then you can unmute, or you can use the chat feature and I could just relay the questions. Actually, Jim will see the questions, but I can also-
Yes, I can see them as well.
Okay, so we could do it that way too. So whatever makes you feel comfortable, but I wanna just welcome Jim. He's gonna do a great presentation for us about cut the cord, try to cut cable costs. So you can just take it over, Jim.
Great, thanks very much. This is there's an interesting history to this sort of. I lived in Tolland for 6 years, from 2011 to 2017, and I was on the library board and things. And I forget why this was a big deal in late 2016, but I suggested to the librarian that this would make a good presentation. She agreed, so we set it up, and a few weeks later we filled the room to capacity with 60 people, and 2 weeks after that we filled the room again with 60 people. And she put it out over the secret librarian network, and the requests started to come in. And by the time I was done in August 2017, I'd done 30 of these presentations live all over the state. And then I left for Colorado. I was still getting requests. And I always had to say, well, I hope your budget includes airfare, which unfortunately it never did. And then of course Zoom came along, and a librarian contacted me I guess about October or November, and said, hey, we do this on Zoom now. So here I am. This is the 11th or 12th. I've got several more, and I'll probably keep doing this almost indefinitely now. So anyway, let me switch over to the actual presentation here. I can find it. Why, there it is. This is Cut the Cord. It's more or less how to tell your cable company to take a hike and get all the entertainment services that you are used to from them for a fraction of the cost down to nothing, and to get more control over those services and things like better household privacy. It's for this presentation. It's for TV viewers who want to know more about streaming entertainment, and there's tons of information out there. There's many websites. There's blogs. There's newspaper articles, and if you've looked at them, they can be a little impenetrable. They tend to talk past people who don't know anything. You know, it's sort of knowledge for the knowledgeable. They talk in jargon, and it gets into very, very elaborate technical discussions of this piece of equipment versus that. It doesn't really help anybody who's trying to get started. So that's what this is really all about. It's for cable customers who want to reduce cable costs, which is pretty much all of us. And in a more general sense, it's for consumers who are looking for a different entertainment model, a better model than what cable has turned into. And the goals, this is not the university of streaming. I can't possibly tell you everything because everybody's situation is different, everybody's household situation is different, everybody's budget is different. So the idea is to give you enough working information that you can make sense out of all of the information that's out there, so that when you go out and you read some, review of equipment, it'll make sense to you, even though they're talking in jargon and talking about things you formerly wouldn't have understood. But it's not a complete education. This is a grounding, it's an orientation, and when you leave, I hope you'll have enough information that you can go find the rest of the information you need. What we're going to cover is the technical basics of how to do streaming content, and really don't worry about it. It's very simple. It's not much more difficult than plugging in a toaster, and it's a lot easier than the old days of trying to hook up a VCR. We'll talk about the various kinds of streaming content. There are a few different kinds. It all comes from more or less one source, but there's different formats for it, and it's helpful to understand those. And mainly it's about how to get control of your cable costs and service and stuff. It's not about bargains. I'm not telling you how to, get, the teaser rates for the 6 months or chisel them into getting HBO for free or something. Bargains are going down the wrong road. You'll just have to repeat that cycle over and over, and eventually you lose. Takes about an hour. When I gave it live, it took about an hour and a half. And when I gave the first presentation of these in November, I used an updated version of that, and it dragged. So I've been whittling it down into something that fits better in a virtual presentation, since of course there's a little bit more, I can present more information live, which helps. So I've gotten it down to pretty much about an hour, and then I'm good for as long as the library cares to go, and as long as there are questions. If you have questions, you can write them down. You can enter them directly in chat. I'll talk about that in a second. But like I said, presentation about an hour. Questions as long as you have them. That's me. Not a very good picture, but you already see what I look like. I'm a writer, editor, publisher. I've worked in and around the tech industry for a very long time, mostly in consumer and business electronics, in telecom design and development. I'm actually back in telecom again after a long hiatus. So I have the intersection of all of the technical information, and my writing skill is to be able to explain that I can absorb very complex technology and tell people how to use it. So this is what I do. I'm also, in the last decade or so, I've been a writer on consumer issues. That's my consumer blog there. You might find it interesting if you're interested in the sort of the role of the consumer in the modern world. I have a pretty radical take on it, so it may not be for everybody's taste, but there you go. Has nothing to do with the presentation. That's just a side thing. I am an independent speaker. I'm not here to represent any company. I'm not on anybody's payroll that's involved with this. I'm very enthusiastic about certain products and services. That's because I like them a great deal and they work very well for me. I've had very good luck recommending them, but not on anybody's payroll. Actually, for the very first time, about the third or fourth of these presentations, I got a call from one of the big providers in Connecticut, and they wanted to get me on a 30-minute Zoom call to really, really pound their product so that I would really, really pound it. I said, sorry, I really don't work that way. Anyway, my family, I started off in California. I was there until 2010. I was in Tolland from 2011 to 17, and then I came over here to Denver. Cut the cable a long time ago in California. 10 years is probably a little short. And back in those days, it took more technical expertise. I had a computer that was with the TV, and it was more like old ham radio than anything else. It was a little difficult. It's gotten very, very easy, but I can say that I've absolutely never missed having cable services. So hopefully you won't be there. Questions. I try to answer all questions. Basically, this is a pretty well structured, very well polished presentation. This is at least the 40th time I've given it. So I've ironed out a lot of wrinkles in it. I do cover all the basics by the end. So any question you have, I likely will get to. Go ahead and type it in the chat if you like. I tend to glance at it as I go, and I will try to answer relevant stuff as I go along if I'm not being clear on a certain point. And at the end, I'll review it all, and you can type in new questions that I can try to answer. So go ahead and type away. It doesn't interrupt me at all, and it does help me direct the presentation a little bit. All the information that I present is on my website there at nitropress.com/CTC. There's also a link right from the main page if you get lost. It doesn't have the whole presentation, but it has a kind of a shorthand cheat sheet of the information. Mostly it has all of the websites and companies and products and things. There's some URLs here that are like 40 characters long. You'll wear yourself out trying to write them down. You don't have to. They're on the website. That's the only address you need to have all of the information that I'm going to go over. And then up here, there's this little star. One of the things that I did, I've streamlined this presentation down a great deal. That means I've cut some of the sections down to like no more than like one slide. And when you see that star, it means I have a lot more information on that topic. I have to kind of give it the short take just to fit into a reasonable hour. So if you see that star, make a note of it. I do have more information on that subject, and I'm happy to go over it at the end for the people who are interested. So let's start with some basic terms. One of the things I learned in giving it live was I get halfway through and it would turn out the audience would have 2 or 3 different ideas of what each term meant. So the internet is the whole global network that connects everything, and it's the wired service that comes to your house one way or the other. Some of you might have a satellite service, basically the same thing, whether it's cable, whether it's DSL. If you're lucky enough to live in a town that has fiber, doesn't matter. It's the wired service that comes to your house. You control the content, you don't control the technology. Wi-Fi, on the other hand, it's a wireless network inside your home or business. It draws from the internet. It's not the same thing. There is a public Wi-Fi that's spreading in large cities that sort of brings the internet to everybody who's there, but that's confusing the issue. Basically, internet is what brings it in. Wi-Fi is what makes use of it inside your house. You may or may not have it. You may only work on a wired. Streaming, which is it's interesting. It's kind of already an outdated term, something like dial a telephone, but it's the term for all the video and audio from the entertainment from the internet. It's all the stuff that pours in for you to watch and listen to and interact with. Cable. When I say cable, I don't mean everything that Cox or whomever brings to you. They have many services now. I just mean plain old cable TV, what it used to be. So when I say streaming versus cable, I'm talking about video and TV programs on the internet versus cable coming to you from cable TV. So, and this, I used to go into a lot about this because I really like to tap dance on cable because I don't like it. At the time I gave this in 2017, there was a university study that had just come out that showed that the most disliked company in America was Comcast. And I mean, I can't imagine why. And Comcast, Charter, Cox, all of them, they're all pretty bad. I won't go into the details in this, you know most of it. It's the fundamental problem with cable is it's a case of them selling what they want to sell, sold their way, and you often have no option whatsoever. You either go with the one cable company you have, or you don't have anything at all. And there's a lot of, they started adding in more and more services, phone, security, smart home features, trying to retain customers, which they are losing by the boatload because people are going to streaming, even more so than they did a few years ago. And they structure all the content so that you have to pay extra here, extra there, and have this tier and have that package just to get the few channels you actually want. And they actually do analyze it. They structure it so that you can't possibly get everything you want with just the basic package. You have to have the sports package. You have to get ESPN. You have to have the kids package to get Nickelodeon. You have to have whatever. So that it's very manipulative. And like I said, you already know all of this. You can argue with them if you have more than one provider. Even you can argue and say, well, fine, just cancel and go to the other guys. And oh yeah, they'll give you 6 more months of the introductory rate or so. It's a losing game. Eventually they won't do it anymore. They'll just say, fine, quit, because they know you don't have the choice. So that's why I don't go into that. It's not a productive way to go. The idea is to get rid of cable altogether. And that's what we're going to talk about. So the question, how do you get rid of cable in Connecticut? And the answer is, you probably can't. Because in a large city, a large metro area, you may have as many as 5 or 6 providers you can choose from. In the towns, you've got one usually. If you're lucky, you have a second one. I think you do. We'll look. But the idea is not to get rid of the cable company. The idea is to get rid of cable TV and go to a service that they can't jerk you around on. So ITV, it's the alternative. Internet TV, independent TV, inexpensive TV, it can be. I used to have intelligent up there, but I decided that really intelligent and TV really don't go together very well. So I took that out. The basic thing is it starts with internet streaming, and the costs, the starting point for that is that costs are lower. Basically, your TV entertainment can be free, like it used to be in the old days, because your internet connection, which is a bundled part of your cable, isn't really part of cable. Cable TV isn't good for anything except watching. You can't, use it to clear your driveway. It won't walk your dog. It won't do your dishes. It's, you can watch it or you can not watch it, and you still pay for it. Internet, of course, is the lifeline out to the world, especially now when we're all kind of stuck home. It's another household utility. So if you think of internet as being just a household utility that powers a lot of things, it's not just your entertainment that you're paying for. So if you consider that cost separate, the actual entertainment part can be completely free. And it brings cost control. If you do pay for anything, you only pay for what you want, when you want to watch it. You don't have to pay for 500 channels and 4 packages because you occasionally watch a movie on HBO. This has changed a little bit since I first gave this talk, but there's basically no contracts. Subscriptions can be adjusted from month to month. You can turn Netflix on and off. They actually used to have a suspend feature. They knew that people didn't watch during the summer. So in May, you could go on and you could go click and you could suspend it for as long as 3 months, which meant you didn't get billed, you didn't have the services, but then it would automatically start back up on your same account. They don't offer it anymore. It's a little too friendly. Hey, a lot of stuff is pay-per-view. Movie channels are pay-per-view. So if you don't watch movies, you don't pay anything. If you watch one movie, you pay for that movie. You don't pay $15 or $20 a month for HBO for a ton of stuff that you never watch. So the costs are much lower and much better controlled. It's not just cheaper, it's a better alternative in that you can choose only what you want to watch when you want to watch it. You don't have to put up with trying to record stuff. You don't have to put up with all those channels you don't watch. Everything on basic streaming it's pre-recorded. It's like Netflix. It's not like watching live channels where you have to be there at a certain time or you have to somehow record it. Everything is pre-recorded. It's on demand. It's waiting for you to watch, rewind, start over, skip to the end, watch again. You no longer have to have a DVR. You don't need TiVo, which to me is one of the great scams. Having to pay to be able to tune your TV is a bit of a scam. Even the British don't go that far. So you don't have to, you don't do any programming. You don't forget to record programs. You don't have to delete your whole Gilligan's Island collection to get the new to have room for the new Stephen King miniseries. It's all out there just waiting for you. So it's a much better model than the way cable works. The choices, when I gave this first, the choices were getting to be as wide as cable. Now, 3 years later, 4 years later, they're much wider. Not only is nearly everything on cable available through streaming, but there are many options. There are very small channels that are dedicated to specialty hobbies and specialty interests. So it's the intersection of old cable and YouTube and the internet all on your TV. There's tons of stuff out there. You can, this is a question that I always forgot this and somebody would ask halfway through. You don't have to switch from one to the other. You can add streaming and keep cable. In fact, back then when it was more difficult to get sports, a lot of people, what they could do was reduce cable to some very bare minimum package and use streaming to fill in all of the expensive stuff. You can still do it that way. I have kind of a protocol I recommend. If you go to streaming, I recommend you sort of pretend you don't have cable anymore. Force yourself to go find all your channels and so forth. And pretty soon you'll realize you're not switching over to cable anymore. If you just get the cable and put in streaming and do nothing but watch a movie on Netflix, you won't get the benefit out of it. You won't get away from cable. We'll talk more about that. But the big advantage to me, especially when I'm wearing my consumer hat, which is here somewhere, is you can have 0 commercials. You can never see another TV commercial. You can never sit through another pharmaceutical commercial again, as long as you live if you choose to. The trade-off is that the free stuff is ad-supported, but the subscription stuff tends not to be. And if you play things carefully, you never have to watch commercials again. A lot of advantages to that besides just sitting through yet another pharmaceutical ad. So let's start with something else, though. The original streaming, of course, was that old thing called TV, and you had an antenna, and it came in. And sometimes I skip over this, but I did check, and you guys actually do have pretty good coverage. Over here, you see what we had in Tolland. We'll go look at this for your town in a minute. Over in Tolland, there was nothing. There were no green channels. There were no slightly strong channels. It was dead as a doornail. Even those of us who were up on a ridge and had a tall antenna could just barely pick up 1 or 2 channels. It wasn't worth happening. That's true of a lot of towns in Connecticut. They're a little too far out. They're too small. It's a little too hilly. But on the other hand, this is where I live now, Aurora. I've got something like 15 channels. That isn't 15 channels. That's 45 channels, because modern digital TV, which was greatly improved about 20 years ago, and nobody noticed because they were all getting their channels from their cable system. Now, if you put an antenna back up, you've got spectacular, technically spectacular TV, and each channel is usually 3 channels. Like if you get the local ABC affiliate, the first channel is the regular ABC programming, like 15-1. 15-2 is other ABC programming. It's reruns. It's programs they don't run widely. It's localized stuff. 15-3 might be anything. It might be a shopping channel. It might be an alternate language channel. It might be just complete junk. But basically, if you have 10 channels, you actually have close to 30 channels. So it's really, really, really worth, if you have any green channels, any strong channels, which you do, it's really worth putting up an antenna to get those channels. And I'm not going to go on into this too much. We'll look up what you have here real quick. First of all, if you decide to, these guys, antennasdirect.com, they're a commercial company. I'm not recommending them on any basis, except that they have a very, very good site. They have tons and tons of how-to and help and explanation and stuff. So if you decide to do it, that's the place to go get the information. And then they will very kindly sell you exactly what you need for your situation at a pretty good price. So they're a good resource. The place to look is on the FCC. They have a lookup, which we're going to go to in a second here. And this is the URL. Don't bother writing it down. It's on my website. And what I'll do is I'll enter just the zip code for Southington. But if you enter your address, it will give you more precise information. If you're up on a ridge, you may get more channels. If you're kind of down in a hollow, 100 feet away, you may get fewer, but it will tell you exactly what you should get. It's not just the antenna and strength information. It actually does have some topographical information, so it knows. So let's go ahead and go look at that. Switch over here to the other. This is one of the nice things. I couldn't do this on the live presentations, so it's nice to be able to switch over and do this live for you folks. So go to, this is the FCC site, and you enter your location. I'm just going to go, like I said, I'll just enter your zip code. There's 489, that's correct. And you folks are lucky. You've got 7 green channels. That's more than enough to make the investment of no more. I mean, an extravagant antenna would be on the order of $100 to $150. You can do it a lot cheaper. You could probably do it within a $50 budget. You may even know it's one of the very small ones that I'll go back and show it to you. There's ones you can basically stick on the right wall of your living room, and they will bring in the strongest channels. So these channels here make it more than worthwhile, and I really, really recommend it that you do it. For one thing, if you watch any of the broadcasts, if you actually have all of them, you have some towns actually lack one affiliate or another for some reason, but you actually have all the affiliates. You have CW, you have Fox, you have PBS, you have everything. And if you've been getting that over cable, it's compressed. It's lower quality to fit on cable. What comes over the antennas is True HD. It's spectacular. It looks like something from a science fiction movie, frankly. So if you've been used to the kind of crummy images from cable TV, if you switch over to an antenna to watch local news, local sports, and watch the programs you watch that are on the major affiliates, you'll be astounded at the quality. It's worth every bit of the investment. Switch back here. There I am. I'm sure you know an automated way to do that. I haven't found it yet. Let me go backwards here. Whoops. This is what the smallest antenna looks like. It's a flat rubbery disc, and you can actually just stick it on your wall, and connect it to your TV. And these are about, you can get them for about $20 or $25. I used to have the bigger ones and show them, like I said, Antennas Direct will help you with that. You can go all the way up to ones that will pull in even more antennas, more stations than I list. So, okay, that's all I'm going to say about OTA. That's a side thing, and it does happen to work for you, so it's worth looking into. So let's look at the technical basics of what it takes to do streaming. And I'm presenting this as if you want to replace your cable box. Basically, you want to sit down, you want to pick up a remote, you want to watch something on your TV. That's not the only way you can use streaming. Streaming, of course, works on any device that can connect to the internet, any device that has a screen, like the one you're using right now. You can do it on a smartphone, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on a laptop, you can do it on a computer. And like it's very flexible. Like there are times I watch most of the movie on my big screen, and I go to bed, I curl up, I have a big dog curl up with me, and I watch the rest of it on a tablet. It's very, very flexible. Keep that in mind. Well, I'm pretty much only going to talk about it as if we're going to put it on your living room TV, but streaming itself can be done on any device, very flexible, very transportable. Keep that in mind. So the first thing you need is good internet service. And we'll talk about that in a minute in kind of a compressed form. Obviously, you have to have the internet to bring it to you. You don't often have a lot of choices for that, so we'll talk about that. You do need a TV with an HDMI port, which is nearly all of them for at least the last 15 years. That's the big D-shaped connector that you see on them. Looks really scary and technical. It's actually your best friend because they're very, very easy. Anyone who ever hooked up a VCR or just player where there were, a dozen cables, all of which had the same RCA connectors, and you could get it wrong several times, and it just was a huge pain. It's not like that anymore. HDMI makes it a very simple thing. You plug one end of the cable into the device that does the tuning or has the image. You plug the other end into your TV. You're done. It's video, it's audio, it's control, it's power in some cases. It's about as foolproof as it could possibly get. But you do need one of those. All streaming devices I know of, the very, very few that used other connections are long gone. So you do have to have an HDMI port to be able to plug it into your big TV. You do need a streaming device. We'll talk more about that in details, what it can be. And you do need a credit card if you want any pay services. If you want Netflix, Hulu, HBO, those, they don't have any billing system. They don't have any. They won't send you a bill or anything like that. You do have to have a credit card that they can tap every month. That came up late sometimes in the discussion. So we're very disappointed because they, gotten rid of their credit cards or lost them at Mohegan Sun or something. But you do need a credit card to be able to subscribe to online services. So this is where I cut probably the most out. I used to go into a great deal about what constituted good internet. I actually had a mini session on how internet works for a house. It's just too much information. It's a whole session in itself. It's very technical. Don't be frightened away if this slide just goes completely right past you. This is by far more technical than the rest of everything. So I'm going to skim through this for the folks who do understand it. The takeaway for those who don't is you need somebody to set up good internet for you, whether it's somebody in the family, your next door neighbor, your 13-year-old nephew, or somebody you hire. It's like plumbing, it's like electrical. It may be worth hiring somebody to come in and set up really good internet for you. Not necessarily the provider. The providers do they might do it free, they might do it for some small flat fee, but they tend to do a pretty crummy job, and they only do it with their equipment, which is not a good idea. So the part that'll be interesting to half of you and completely gibberish to the rest, you want high reliability. You want 100% uptime. There's no point. Sometimes you have a choice of several providers. Sometimes there's a really, really cheap one, but they have lousy reliability. They go out for an hour, go out for 5 minutes every evening. You sure don't want that for your entertainment. It'll drive you crazy. So you want high reliability. You want low latency, which is lag or ping. That's basically how fast your system communicates with all the other systems through the network. It's not speed per se, it's how quickly it responds. And a long ping or a lot of lag will make video unwatchable. So that's probably the most critical factor of anything. You want a very low ping, very low lag connection. But one thing, and this is something I have another slide that I'll go into more detail. You don't need anything more than moderate speed. The speed is sold and sold and sold. They keep trying to get you to take faster and faster packages. It does nothing but fill their wallet. Very few households need anything more than about 25 to 40 megabits. And that's actually the floor of most offerings now. Here in Denver, my second year, I signed up with Comcast again. I think I had 45 megabits. It's gone up every year just because that's the slowest speed they offer. I think I'm at 90 to 95 now. Like I said, it just happens to be the slowest one they offer anymore. And I'm still paying a very modest rate for it. So if you have other any choice of providers, what you want is the ones that have those two characteristics and have the lowest cost, obviously. So what you do is you locate all the internet providers that service your location, and you don't have to. You can actually look wider. This is something that in towns that have multiple selections, there were providers they would never consider because they didn't have a cable service. They only provided internet. Now you don't care how many cable channels they have. You don't care if they offer phone. You don't care if they will come do your windows for you. That all you care about is really good, solid, low-cost internet service because you're going to do everything else yourself. You want to reject their equipment. You want to buy your own equipment. And I can talk at great length about that. I'll just summarize that. In most cases, the equipment they give you is junk and it's not secure. They can go right through it to your computers because they have an administrative backdoor. And it being junk, it means it fails. They don't care. They'll bring you another one for free, but you're going to do it without service for 2 or 3 days. There's just no reason to use their stuff because it's actually very cheap stuff. You can buy it for a fraction of what you will pay to rent it from them. A lot of particularly with the pandemic and a lot of people home and using a lot of cable service or a lot of internet service, they've started imposing data caps. They've always threatened them. They've almost never implemented them because they're very unpopular, which means that they will only give you so much data for the month, and then they'll start charging you more, like cell phones used to be. It's not usually a problem for most home users. The data cap is very generous on a residential level. We'll talk a little more about that on the next slide, but don't really worry about that when choosing a provider. Having a data cap is not black mark against them. It's actually economically sensible. And if you have good Wi-Fi, it's an asset in your house. And this is maybe the time. If you're going to be rearranging your equipment, buying your own, having somebody put it for you, this is a time to put a little money into Wi-Fi so that you have a good, strong signal all through your house. My house in Tolland was one of the typical 3-story colonial giant box. I had to have 3 access points spread through the house so that everybody had good, strong signals. But I used wired for everything else. My office had wired connection, and I ran a wire to our main video stand because it's incredibly reliable. If you use Wi-Fi is great, Wi-Fi is wonderful, but sure as heck, if you sit down to watch something, it'll need the password, or something will be interfering with it, or something will need to be reset. Wires, the maintenance consists of occasionally dusting. It really is worth bringing wired connectivity to your main TV, and there's a couple different ways to do that. That's really all I can say about good internet. Basically, the takeaway is you need good internet, you want good internet. If you have to pay somebody for it, or if you have to do a favor for a neighbor, or buy your 13-year-old nephew, lunch at McDonald's or something to get it, it's worth it. But let's go back to speed, because if you're going to be talking to providers, that's one thing that they will push on you. It's grossly oversold. There are houses out there with gigabit fiber that have 300 megabit service, have 250 with burst to 500. You don't need it. And the reason's over there is over here on the right. Most home use simply does not go anywhere near those speeds. HD video, which is what you'll be watching mostly, only needs 6 megabits per second. So if you're sitting there watching a movie in HD, you're only drawing 6 megabits per second. Why do you need 300? Answer, you don't. If you have 2 people watching HD, you need 12. You're still not very high. If you have 4 people in your house all watching HD video at the same time, you're using about 24 megabits. It still fits into that incredibly slow, by their standards, 25 megabits. Since you can't get much slower than about 40 or 50 now, it's a non-issue. Even if you're into 4K video, the very high resolution, high performance stuff, it only runs about 14 megabits per second. So 2 of you could watch under 25, 3 to 4 under 40. You simply do not need super high speeds. Don't pay for it. The other thing is, if you have any gamers in the house, a gamer who will claim they need super high speed, no, they don't. I'm a gamer. My son's a gamer. games use about 1 megabit per second or less. They're not sending all of that video information across the network. They're just sending a very, very thin control stream, which is probably less than a good loud phone call in terms of data usage. You do want to use good equipment. I'll go back to this. Their stuff is often junk. If you buy your own modem and router, you will save rental costs. And just one example, a typical cable modem, there's pretty much only one model that's used by pretty much all cable companies. It was originally designed by Motorola. It's now made by a secondary company. They charge you $5 to $10 a month to have it. It's about a $35 piece of equipment, and they are as reliable as an engine block. I have one that I've been using, the one I'm talking to you right now on, I've been using for over 12 years. And so if you buy your own for $35 to maybe $50, depending on which model and whether you buy it used or new, you're saving. They're charging you $60 to $120 a year to rent that piece of equipment. So there's money savings right there, even if you do nothing else. You can also, if you replace the Wi-Fi part of it, if they give you an all-in-one block that's Wi-Fi, instead of having one Wi-Fi point stuck somewhere in your basement or laundry room or back corner, you can do a better job of you can locate it somewhere else. You can add extra points to it so you get better coverage. Anyway, that's really I've gone on longer than I even intended to. This is a huge subject. The takeaway is you need good internet. Do your best with it. I will point out here, most data caps are 1 terabyte, 1,000 gigabytes. That is 330 hours of HDTV. Very few households are going to watch 11 hours a day of HDTV and get near the data cap, which is why it's not really a concern. The folks who tend to blow through it are the ones who are doing things like running a company server or something on a residential connection. They might blow through 2, 3, 5 terabytes a month and giggle about it because they're paying so little for their connectivity. That's what the cable companies object to, kind of rightly. So don't worry about data caps. Okay, so let's go ahead and go see what you have. This is one of the problems with finding providers. It's a little bit like trying to get competitive prices for fuel oil. There aren't any sources. You have to call all of the providers in your area, and you have to get on the phone. You have to talk to them, and what contract length do you want, and do you want a guaranteed price? And then finally you find out it's whatever a gallon. It's pain in the butt. There are sites that try to collect that information, but it's never updated. It's like the sites that try to keep track of gas prices. So the broadband or internet is the same way. There isn't any central repository of that information. There is, however, these guys. They're called broadband now. They are a commercial service. They will try to sell you stuff. They'll try to push certain services, but they are an excellent resource. So again, we'll go ahead and enter your zip code, and you can enter your home here again. And so a lot of times in towns, one corner of a town has service that the rest of the town doesn't have. So it's worth going here and entering your own address to make sure you've got all the options that you might have. So you are 06489. Okay. And this is all just show business. It only takes them a second to actually pull it. So you folks actually have pretty incredible options. You do have Cox. Looks like most of you have Cox. Very few of you have Comcast. This is what I mean. The folks who have this are probably over on the corner next to some other town. You just happen to have service by that. So you have basically these 3 providers. The satellite providers, of course, go anywhere you can see the sky. I don't recommend them, except it's an absolute last resort. If you have a vacation house, or if you live in if you live really far out on a country road where the cable and phone wiring is lousy, they're a backstop option. They tend to be a lot more expensive. They have technical limitations. They rain out, they snow out, you lose the signal. So they're there if you need them, but they're not really a first line choice. Looks like your choice really is Cox, which is typical. And then you do have the option of Frontier. Frontier is one of the companies that repurposes the old Ma Bell copper phone wires. They bring you data over that copper wiring network, which is still out there, hardly ever used for phones anymore. Uses a different technology called DSL or ADSL, which is kind of the rub. If you go with them, they're often a little cheaper. They have low cost packages, but you basically can't buy your own equipment. When I came to Denver, I got CenturyLink is the company here. They had a great deal on fairly fast internet using DSL, but the modem and the router are proprietary to that and very, very expensive. They're about $300. And that was like 3 or 4 years rental. So it was not, so you lose out on that advantage. So if you go with Frontier, because they have advantages for you, keep in mind you will have to pay the rental and you will have to use their equipment. There's not really any good choice. Whereas if you go with Cox, even if it's a little more expensive, you can buy all of your own equipment and save that rental or equipment cost. So it's not always perfectly straightforward. But you do have two good choices. Not all towns do. Some of you have a third choice, and there's always the satellite guys. Again, if you run this for your address, it'll tell you whether or not you're, for instance, in the Xfinity Comcast area. So back to this again. So now I'm assuming that basically you have put up an antenna and found out you can get a whole lot of great channels for free. Some people actually are good with that and never pay a dime for any streaming at all. It's a great thing to have. And I'm assuming you've got really great internet one way or the other. So now let's talk about how you get streaming content. You need something in the middle, like a cable box, like a TV, or like a tuner box that will bring all of this programming to your TV. You need one independent device per viewing location. They don't interact with each other at all. Some of you might remember the days when you put in one cable box, you put in a $500 VCR, you put in a $1,000 Laserdisc player, and then to use those, you put in all kinds of complicated cabling so that you could, for instance, watch a Laserdisc up in the bedroom using the one that was in the living room just to save money. Doesn't work that way anymore. It doesn't even work like cable works. Everything is completely independent. All they need is internet, which can be Wi-Fi, which means you can take them anywhere, and then you can use each one on any accounts you have. Netflix, Hulu, all of them. But they're completely independent. What you're doing in the living room has nothing to do with what your kids are doing in their room. So they can be any in the phone. They can be any, basically, any device that picks up the internet on one end and has a screen on the other can be used for streaming. Phones, tablets, computers, anything. You can also connect those to TV. That's rather technical. I do have some material on that if anybody's interested. It's nice if you have a very nice smartphone or tablet, you can use that as your streaming device and actually still throw it onto your TV. But it's kind of a side niche, a little technical, so I'm going to leave it out. You can also use the streaming that's built into smart TVs. And a lot of disc players and game consoles sold for the last 10 years have streaming built in as kind of a consequence. The good part is it's free. You've already got it. If you haven't experimented with it, as soon as you're done listening to me and have some dinner, you can mess around with what you already have. You probably won't like it. It's the menus tend to be clumsy to use. The menus are bad. The apps that do the work tend to get outdated. I don't recommend smart TVs for that reason. Vizio, Samsung, LG, they make very nice smart TVs, but they aren't very good about keeping the apps updated. So, Netflix changes its function, it changes its security a little, and the apps no longer work without being updated. And after a few years, they stop sending updates to their older models. So all you have left is a plain old TV. So if you buy a TV, buy the best TV you've got, put the streaming and all that functionality out on a different device. You won't save any money either way. You'll just have more flexibility, and anything that does combine jobs means that something's going to break more easily. So, if you have a smart TV, though, it's certainly a good place to start. You don't have to wait till tomorrow to go buy a streaming device. And that's really what we're talking about here. A streaming device, something that does this for you like a cable box, is really the maximum convenience features. They don't need to, they're completely self-maintaining and updating, and it's just like cable. You turn it on and you watch, and that's all there is to it. And fortunately, they're rather they're very, very reasonably priced. So the basics. This is kind of a joke here. This is a streaming box, and I to make it properly generic, I put my own brand name on there. And I thought it was funny, but I'd get halfway along, and people want to know where they could buy a streaming extreme box. Well, you can't. So now I just have your brand of streaming box here. And they all work pretty much the same. Internet on one side, preferably wired if you can do it, Wi-Fi if not, and that's what goes in. What comes out is that one HDMI cable. You plug in the HDMI cable, you plug it in your TV, and you're basically done. That's all of the technical setup that's required. They do have a remote, and you can a lot of times integrate that with a good blind remote. I have a Logitech that will work with anything, and so I have one remote for everything. It's very simple, very convenient. These are very small. You don't have to have a shelf for them. They're typically this is about 5 or 6 inches across. None of them are any bigger. You can tuck it on a little plant shelf. You can put it on top of the TV. You can do anything you want. You don't have to have a great big entertainment console like you used to. It's worth looking at this. This is the 4 connections you'll find on like the most complex, most upscale versions. Power, very easy. You plug it into the wall. The Ethernet, that's the network connection. Ideally, you do want to use this and not use Wi-Fi, but that's a simple connection if you have it. The HDMI cable that goes out to the TV. And this is kind of neat. On the upscale ones, which are not very expensive, there's often a USB port. You can plug a thumb drive in. And if the thumb drive has photos or video on it, you can play it on your TV. It's probably the easiest way that's ever been around to do that. So you can do your vacation pictures. You can do movies that come from non-standard sources, all kinds of things. And all you do is you plug it in, you go into the thing, you go to the media player, and you play actually like playing on a computer, but it's on your big TV. It's wonderful. My daughter came over several months ago with a thumb drive. I plugged it in, and I got to see all of her 3D ultrasound. I got introduced to my granddaughter a few months earlier. It's a very, very convenient thing to have. These are little computers, of course, and they mostly run Android, like the phones. In fact, what they're more than like is they're a Android phone without a screen. The screen is your TV. When you plug it in and bring it up, you'll see it has the same sort of visual interface. You add an app for each channel that you want. You have the Netflix app, the Hulu app, the Pluto TV app, whatever. You only have to add the ones you want. When I gave this the first time, there were still some out there that were standard definition, regular TV definition. I think they're all gone. All of them are at least HD, and you don't have to get very far up the scale anymore for them to be 4K. As you get further and further up the scale to the best models, they're not just 4K, but they're the enhanced versions, HDR, UHD, the very, very high resolution stuff. I would recommend when you buy it, this is something, even as a consumer advocate, it's worth spending a little more money on to get something better than you might think. The price difference isn't much. I mean, the most expensive ones of these are about $100. It's worth spending another $10 or $20 to get one that has better end capabilities. Like, for instance, if you don't have a 4K TV, your next TV will be a 4K TV because that's basically all they sell anymore. You're not going to want to replace this when you replace your TV next year. So buying one that has 4K capability in reserve, it's inexpensive and it's a good idea. And the other little features like having the USB port is nice to have. Don't cheap out too much on it. They have a very long lifespan. The first one I bought back in California, my son still has it. He still uses it. It still works just fine. 12 years later, they're a very, very durable piece of equipment to buy. The parts that change are in the software and the apps, and those are continuously updated. And a question that came up, always surprised me, and so I threw it in here. There's no recurring cost on these. You buy it, you own it. It will work forever without you paying a dime for anybody. You don't have to pay monthly fees or licenses or anything. You do have to pay for the subscriptions you choose, but for the general use, for free channel stuff, there is no cost to have it, own it, or use it. So let's move to a specific thing. This is the model, the brand that I recommend. Roku they were the originator of this. They were the ones who took all of that complicated stuff we get on computers and stuck it into a small box that you could easily plug in and made it completely foolproof, even for relatively technically inexperienced people. I recommend them highly because they're still neutral. They're not tied to any corporate platform or marketing platform. So they're sort of the Switzerland of streaming. Everybody makes an app for them. Everybody keeps their apps updated. They're the most neutral provider. They have gone into their own. They have something called the Roku channel now, but they're not really competing with anybody, not on the level that the others are. So the beginning and the end is, if you're going to go buy one, buy a Roku. There are other models you can glance at here in a minute. I recommend against nearly all of them, in favor of this, unless you really, really know what you're doing. They have many models. You can, if your neighbors have a used one, if you pick one up at a flea market, very simple. If it works when you plug it in, it works. There's no subtle things that go wrong with them. So you can pick up used ones. You can buy the older models if you find them. They haven't changed much. The biggest change that they've evolved from SD and HD to just HD to HD and 4K, and I suppose there might even be only 4K models out there now. And that's what you're paying more for as you go up the thing, as you go up the ladder. It's worth buying, like I said, a slightly better model than you might think, because they do have a long, long lifespan. So anyway, there's an app for it. You can take your smartphone, you take your tablet and download the Roku app, and you have a very, very fancy high-end remote for it that will let you do things like search for movies and then say, okay, play that one. So it's having a very, very powerful, expensive remote for them. Works very well. It's nice to have. Real quick, here's the other guys. I used to put a lot of time into this. Is one of the areas where I compressed it. The bottom line is I don't recommend any of them for different reasons. Like Amazon is very, very similar they offer a very similar product lineup, but they are locked to the Amazon universe. Things like the Netflix app, for a long time they didn't have Netflix, then it was on there. It still has problems. It isn't updated as frequently because they are competitors and they don't want to play that. And that's true of the first two. The ones on the bottom, if Infinity tries to give you one free, throw it away. There's lots of reasons. I can go into more detail on the why, but the bottom line is, folks, if you're going to go out and buy one tomorrow, buy a Roku. It doesn't earn me a dime. They're just the best. Let me go back to this. There are two basic formats of streaming device. One is the stick. It looks like a great big thumb drive, and it plugs right into that HDMI port. It only uses Wi-Fi. You can't do a wired thing with it, but they are very portable. The nice thing is you can take it anywhere. Any TV you plug it into that has a Wi-Fi signal available, you can watch all of your channels. So it's big with college students. They can watch something on their little TV in the dorm, then plug it. They go plug it into the common area TV and watch it with, watch the rest of the movie with 4 or 5 other people. They unplug it, take it to a friend's house, watch something else. Very, very portable. The only thing you need is what you're looking at there, the stick and the remote, and away you go. So if you have, a vacation house, if you go on vacation, if you go to your in-laws' house, whatever, you can take basically all of your video services with them. The only thing you need there is their internet. The other thing is, the other product is the box, the one I already showed you. It's 5 inches across. They just tend to run a little better. They do allow wired connections. They do allow plugging in the USB drive. And they're a little faster. You'll hear a lot of discussion about this box is fast. It has nothing to do with video. It only has to do with how well the menus and stuff work. And like even the old one my son has, which is considered horribly slow, it still works just fine. The new ones are a little quicker. That's the only thing you get. So anyway, that's basically these come. Amazon has both. Most of the other makers do it. You can get a stick. You can get a box. I recommend a box for your first one. If you're going to buy a second one, like for your upstairs bedroom, you might want to consider buying a stick, because then you can move it around. You could loan it to a guest who wants to watch something in the guest room. You could take it somewhere else. So box first, maybe a stick second. Right back down to wherever we were. Talk about these guys. So now, basically, I assume you put up an antenna and you have all those great channels, you have great internet, and you have a great streaming box hooked up, and you're looking at the menu and trying to figure out what to do with it. The content is endless. It's also permanently in flux. It changes and changes and changes and changes. Who has what property? Who has what movie? You might have heard the news over the last year or so. 3 big contenders came along: HBO Max, Disney Plus, and Apple TV Plus. And they went out and swept up a lot of properties that had been kind of laying around. There were a lot of movies, a lot of TV programs that the licensing was so flexible that, Netflix had them, Hulu had them, Amazon had them. You could watch, all the old Star Trek series in several different places. And these guys, when they came along, they kind of swept up a lot of that content and pulled it behind their own paywall. The big one that made a lot of flap was, if you want to watch the Charlie Brown specials, you have to have Apple TV Plus, that or own one of the discs that was sold in the last 40 years. But basically, it's no longer just sort of floating around out there. Netflix doesn't drag it out for the holidays. the only place you can find those 3 programs is on Apple TV Plus. And there's lots and lots more, lots of movies, lots of TV programs that got pulled behind these firewalls that were out there for many years. Keeping up with where all this stuff is I used to go into a lot of detail about the providers and who had what, and I gave them up. So the idea is the summary, the takeaway from all of this is there's lots and lots of channels, and you have to go, just like anything else, you have to go find the actual content you want. So let's talk about what a streaming channel is. It's not like a cable channel. It's not a river pouring out all the time that you have to stop and look at. They're like Netflix, which most of you are probably familiar with. You subscribe to them, you go in, you have a choice of everything they have, something like 60 or 70,000 different things on Netflix. And each one, you can watch the movie beginning to end, backwards, skip back, watch it again. They're all like they're pre-recorded on your DVR. So it's more like a catalog of programs. Everything's on demand. And some have channels within channels. It's gotten more complicated. If you have Amazon Prime, which is one of the better services overall anyway, you can sort of plug in other things. Like you can have Amazon Prime and you can get HBO Max as sort of a plug-in. Instead of having a completely separate channel, all of their offerings simply become part of what's on that one channel. And that goes down to very small ones. There's, if you're familiar with IMDb, the online reference for movies and stuff, they have their own channel now, and they've swept up a lot of older TV programs and so forth. And you can go into Amazon and plug in IMDb TV as one of the channels, and now all that stuff is available there too. So it's gotten more convenient as well. There are some continuous feed channels where you tune in like a broadcast channel or a cable channel. They're not very common on their own. Mostly that's things like news, local news and so forth. Most of them are only available under the model of streaming cable, which came along and kind of set us back quite a bit. All of the cable channels were going to individual availability. You could download their app. It might be free, it might be some small amount per month, but you could pick and choose only the ones you wanted. And then right about when that was about to be complete, and all it was left was kind of the big block of middle cable channels, AMC, History, Discovery, that kind of thing. What happened was streaming cable came along, and all of those channels are now only available under, if you subscribe to basically a streaming cable service, which is a whole different model. There's a couple we'll look at in a minute. And what they did was now basically you pay one rather large fee for a whole bunch of channels you're not likely to watch so that you can get the few you want. A big step backwards, really, but I don't think there's anything to do about it. So let's take a look at that. Now, let's take a look at the types of streaming provider. The most common one is the monthly flat fee one, Netflix. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Video Prime. You pay some amount per month, not usually very much, and you have unlimited access to everything they have. Netflix, like I said, at one point, I think they got up to about 120,000 entries. And then a few years ago, they weeded out all the junk and down to the stuff that was actually worth keeping. And I think they have about 75,000 movies. Almost everything you can imagine is on video, and you're free to watch that 24/7, 365 for your subscription fee. Hulu is the same. Amazon Video Prime is the same. The other model is the pay-per-view. The big guy there is Vudu. They have virtually every movie ever made in most TV programs. You pay for them individually. And movies are generally pretty reasonable. They're between $2 to about $5 each. And TV programs are not. It's about $2 an episode, and then about $20 or $30 for a season. However, you do then own those. If you buy a whole season of The Sopranos, you basically own it in digital form forever. It's not a rental movie. And then below are the free catalog guys. And this usually means ad driven, not always. Some of them are just people fund them out of pocket for various reasons. Most of them do have ads. But when you look at providers like Pluto TV, Crackle, Tubi TV, these are nearly as big as some of the big players. And they have literally tens of thousands of options. Tends to be older stuff, older movies, obscure stuff, older television programs. But not entirely. A lot of them actually have fairly recent movies. If you're the kind of TV viewer who just wants to turn on the TV and watch something good, worthwhile, you will find everything you want on the free channels. You will always find a movie you haven't seen. TV program you want to rewatch, something. It's all out there. You never have to pay anything for it. All you have to pay for is when you want the specific stuff. You want specific TV programs that are only available from pay service, newer movies that are only available for rental and stuff. But if you're not that directed of a viewer, if TV is just an occasional entertainment to you, you can probably get by with just the free stuff. Roku channels. Roku has thousands upon thousands of channels. It's very easy to set one up. And you can have an entire entertaining evening just looking through them. For instance, it looks like every pair of 18-year-olds in the country has set up their own horror movie channel. There are people who have sort of niche viewpoints who create their own channel and rant away in several videos. There are endless repetition. My example, and sometimes it seems to upset people a bit, there's a lot of guys who set up their own Second Amendment rights channel. And what they do is they set it up and they film themselves on their couch with all their guns in the background. And they discover after about 4 videos that they've said everything there is to say. And that's funny in itself, except that there's dozens of these and they're all identical. And it's fun to just skim through them and see different people kind of figuring out the same thing. But really, once you've said 3 or 4 things about Second Amendment rights, there's not much more to say. But there's thousands and thousands of these channels, and you can have just a tremendous amount of fun going through them. On the other end of the scale, things like there are a lot of churches that have their own Roku channel. And sometimes they have the budget to actually live stream their services, which is, of course, more important these days. Or they just record them and they record, Bible groups and things like that. And it's generally all free access. They don't usually limit access to all of the congregation. And of course, then there are more general religious channels. Each denomination, each sect often has its own streaming channel of information as well. So it kind of goes from the sublime down to that ridiculous. But there's just thousands of things out there. I skipped over number 3 there. There is a kind of a niche product, the monthly single source, like HBO used to be. You paid a lot of money and you got HBO. It's gotten a little bigger now. They tend not to be as limited like HBO Plus has. HBO Max has lots and lots of other material that's not HBO. CBS All Access has now, they put a lot of their better programming behind that paywall. It falls somewhere in between pay-per-view and monthly flat fee. You have to kind of decide if they're worth having. They're not quite on the level with Netflix, but they're not quite only HBO like they used to be. There are 4 other kinds of streaming provider. One of them is anything you see on the web. Most streaming boxes have a web browser built in. If not, most smart TVs have a web browser built in. And there are a lot of services, particularly like news. Like I believe if you really want to watch CNN, that's a question I get a lot. CNN streams virtually their full program on the web. They don't have a streaming device as far as I know, or it's not a full service. It's limited to certain programs. So if you add in web video, you have the entire universe on your TV. YouTube, if you haven't looked at it, is not all 2-minute cat videos. There's a lot of stuff on there besides just things that are entertaining. There's lots of informational videos. So there are also full-length movies. It tends to be older movies, obscure ones, where the studio is either defunct or nobody cares. A couple times I've asked in like movie forums. I said, "Oh gosh, there was one Donald Sutherland movie from about 1972, and nobody ever released it on disc, and it's never been available. And I don't know if somebody says, well, look on YouTube." And son of a gun, there's the whole movie, all 90 minutes of it on YouTube. So it's a good resource to throw in, especially if you like that kind of obscure, older stuff. The cable lock channels, I'll kind of skip over. You will find this as you're looking through channels. You'll skim down and go, hey, there's ESPN. And it turns out you can only get ESPN, the streaming channel, if you have and are paying for ESPN, the cable channel. You sort of have to get a note from your cable company to unlock it. And it's kind of a shrinking thing. It was how a lot of these big providers got into streaming by doing this very limited. It had to do with licensing and fees and stuff like that. I just bring it up to dismiss it. You will run into it. It's kind of a shrinking thing now. There are fewer and fewer of those channels. And OTA channels, if you do have reception, which like we established you did, you've got 7 or 8 channels, very, very much worth putting up an antenna to fill in the gaps for things like local news, good sports coverage, and frankly, it's better to watch, if you're going to watch broadcast TV, you will get a much better signal and a much better picture from the antenna than you will from either streaming or cable, so it's worth having. And then, of course, the bottom one is we'll come back to this, is streaming cable, which I think is my next slide. Yes, I finally put it in the right place. This is in the wrong place, and I had to keep chasing it. What happened here was Sling TV is actually Dish Network. And they figured out a couple of years ago they could take their whole feed that goes up to the satellites and then down to your satellite receiving and just turn it sideways onto the internet and market it as cable. AT&T got into it as DirecTV Now. And then Hulu now has Hulu TV. YouTube has an entire pay sector, which brings a cable-like experience along with everything else. And then the big one was Comcast finally got into it. The advantage is this brings cable back. And the advantage is instead of being stuck with your one local cable company, you can actually choose your cable provider. The problem is, of course, you're paying a lot. You're paying 35 or 40 or 50 or more for all the bundles. But you can have cable free of what your local provider chooses to offer. You can, if you don't have Comcast or the only other way, you can get Comcast via the app. I think it's a big step back for consumers. It would have been nice if absolutely everything went to a cafeteria plan, so you could just pick and pay for the 10 channels you wanted, but it got short-circuited, and it's probably not going backwards. The pros are that it brings all those cable channels to you. The cons that it brings cable pricing and bundling back. But those guys are out there if you want to consider them. So to find and connect these, it's actually very easy. You turn on your streaming device. You don't have to chase these down. You don't have to order them from Amazon. You don't have to go on the web and find them. They are in your streaming device's catalog. And again, this is why I recommend Roku, because all of the channels are on Roku, other than the proprietary ones that, Amazon has some proprietary ones, Apple has some proprietary ones. But in general, all the ones you're going to be interested in are on Roku. It's a matter of going through that enormous list and finding the channels you actually want to add. If you're going to do it on a smartphone or a tablet, you just go to the App Store and download the Netflix app, the Hulu app, the Pluto TV app. If it's available at all, it's probably available for one of those devices. And it's available from either Google Play for Amazon device or for Android devices, or from iTunes for Apple devices. Sometimes you can you need a browser plug-in. There's a very few places that they have something elaborate, so you actually have to plug something into a browser on a computer to get them. It's not very common anymore. Generally, you just have to go to the websites, and they use very common software to bring you the video. You don't generally find them out in the wild. You don't go to a website and download it and somehow try to put it on your Roku. That does exist for a certain level of very technical, generally sort of pirate, hacker, off the grid kind of stuff. But in general, you don't have to go find them yourself. It's on your device. That's all you have to do. So how do you choose them? It got a lot simpler a few years ago. A site called Just Watch came along. And you can go to justwatch.com on a computer, or you can download the app. And again, it's available for both kinds of phones. And it's the Google of streaming. And it has everything. It has, I don't know how many hundreds of channels they cover, but it's down to some very obscure stuff. I had a long story I used to tell about a friend whose daughter desperately needed this very obscure South African movie for a report. It had apparently never been released outside of Johannesburg. And I went over and searched on Just Watch. There it was on a rather minor streaming service. So it's all out there. You want to know where Gilligan's Island is? That's where you find it. You want to find out where season 2 of Blue Bloods is. You want to find out where that obscure Donald Sutherland movie is. That's where you go look. It is a commercial site. They do kind of hammer at you and try to sell you stuff a little bit, but it's it's like using Google. The service greatly outweighs it. That's how to find things individually. The other place you can go look is in Roku's channel store. You're on your Roku once you buy it. You can also go to their site, and the website is on my list. And you can just page through all of the thousands of channels they have. And you click on it, it'll give you the basic information about what they have. That's where you'll find someone will say cable or satellite subscription required. They're a block channel. But in general, you can browse and browse and browse and browse. The way to do it, probably once you've added the big ones, is on Just Watch. Search for a whole bunch of stuff you like. Search for the old TV series you like. Search for general kinds of movies you like, and you'll find out they come up on a few providers. Those are the ones you want to add to your list. You don't have to add hundreds and hundreds of providers to your app array. You can probably not have more than about 10. Oops, and I'm into and libraries actually have streaming services now. I asked before we started. They do have there are a couple of streaming services that were built for libraries. One called Hoopla, one called Canopy, and there's others. And what they have is they have this wonderful stuff you don't find anywhere else. Documentaries, somewhat more obscure movies. There are other video type programs. So the only thing, it tends to be a little limited. You're limited in the number of things you can quote check out. You can watch maybe 10 video things per month. That's to help hold the cost down on the overall service. But you can ask when we're done here, and what you do is you add that app. You go to their website. You tell them what library you're with, and you enter, I think, your library card number usually, and that buys you a key to get into the thing. Very much worth adding. Hoopla, Canopy, there's a third one I can't remember, but go ahead and ask, and it's worth adding because it has a range of stuff that you can't find anywhere else. So let's do the quick skim here. I used to go into a lot of detail about this. For movies, obviously Netflix is kind of the big best known provider. You pay them a flat fee. It varies a little bit. You can get 2 screens for up to 2 people at a time in HD resolution, or you can go up to 4 screens. 4 people can watch the same account at the same time on 4K. They keep getting a little more expensive. It goes from about $14 to about $20 right now. For pay-per-view movies, Vudu is the champ. They have, like I said, if there's any movie of consequence on there, I've never found it. And they also have virtually every television program, like I said, for that purchase model. Amazon Video is very much like Vudu. It's mostly pay-per-view and purchase per view. If you have Prime, it's another good reason to have Prime because it becomes a lot more like Netflix. Virtually everything they have becomes free. You can watch as much as you want. And actually, most nights when I go up and sit down and turn on the TV, I find myself on Amazon Prime. They seem to have the stuff that appeals to me. For TV shows, Hulu is the big gorilla. They started, probably 10 years ago as TV on the internet. And they were very small and very crummy, and they were ad supported. And they only had the programs nobody wanted to watch anyway. And they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are TV on the internet. They're very reasonably priced. They're about $8 a month. And they don't just have broadcast, they have virtually every TV program that runs on TV and cable, short of the premium services like HBO. They have AMC, all of that stuff tends to come to Hulu. And the way it generally works is the program runs on its native network on Tuesday night. On Wednesday night, you can watch it on Hulu. And it may be they may only have 2 or 3 of the episodes and that roll off, so you kind of have to keep up with it. Or they may accumulate the whole season. In a few cases, they actually have prior seasons. Generally, what happens is the program runs on its native network. It goes to Hulu. When the season is over, it rolls over, and it's Netflix that then has all of the older seasons, everything up to, if we're on season 9, Netflix has everything through season 8. That's typically how it works. Again, it moves around an awful lot. But Netflix does have many, many TV shows, just not current ones, not current season ones. Amazon, same thing. Vudu has everything. If you can't get a TV show any other way, you can get it on Vudu by paying for it by the episode. Typically $2 an episode, but if you're going to watch the whole, like I think the program we watched that we couldn't get anywhere else was Justified. Liked it a lot. It was worth paying for, so I guess I still own it. And by paying $24 or so, we got the whole season as it rolled out. So that's one way to get that one program or one show instead of subscribing to the cable package or subscribing to an expensive, paying $15 a month for something so that you can watch an episodic show. You can get just that show at kind of a high price, but still probably a little cheaper. So Vudu is a great resource. The premium providers out there, the ones that charge a lot for not so much. HBO has about 3 different portals. If you're going to get HBO Max. I won't tell you why I made that mistake. You can subscribe to the wrong one for the same amount. I subscribed to the one that I could get through Amazon Prime, and it turned out to be everything HBO Max had except the new movies. So I let that one go. There's also Disney Plus. If you have kids, of course, it has virtually everything Disney has, and they've swept up tons and tons and tons of other relevant, child and family programming. Apple TV Plus is sort of the odd man out here. This is not the same thing as the technology. Apple has a product called Apple TV. I frankly don't recommend it, even if you're an Apple household. It's just not a very good product in a lot of ways. Very expensive, very limited in what it has. Apple TV Plus is a subscription service. You can get it on anything, including that Roku. They tend to be. It's not everything Apple does. They tend to think for you and curate for you, and so they kind of only have the very good stuff. You may want the All Gilligan's Island channel, and they won't carry it. So you might want to look at it. It may serve you. They do have, all of these guys also have their own original programming. Netflix has originals, which are winning Oscars. Hulu has originals, which are winning Oscars and Golden Globes. HBO, of course, does. I don't know. Disney, I think, has all of the Star Wars stuff. Apple has a number of very high-end, very literate things. So each one has its strengths and its weaknesses. The way to figure out which ones you want are use free trials. Almost all of them have free trials. If you look, and what I recommend you do is, for instance, you'll probably want Netflix if you watch a lot of movies. If you haven't exhausted your interest in it, get each one on a free trial and concentrate on it. Don't just get it and forget about it. Get Netflix and spend a week watching Netflix. Go through all of their offerings. Do they have enough that you really want to keep paying them $12 a month? And if not, cancel it. Same thing for Hulu, same thing for HBO, same thing for Disney Plus, and all of these. Use the free trials judiciously to find out if they really have stuff you want to keep paying for. And something I skipped over on Hulu. Hulu is, like I said, it's about $8 a month. They might have gone up a little bit, and it's just all TV you can eat. The nice thing is you pay them another $4 a month, and they take away all the commercials. And that was always worth $4 to me. Not only do I not have to watch commercials, and about the 4th time you see a Chevy truck ad, you never want to watch TV again, much less pharmaceutical ads. But the main thing too is you can also get through your shows about 20% quicker. So even if you like ads, it's really nice to be able to watch a show uninterrupted for 40 minutes instead of taking an hour, with all those breaks. So Hulu's the only one I know that does that, but it's the best $4 I think you can spend on streaming. All the major channels have their own apps now. You can get a generic ABC app, a generic CBS app, etc. Their programming tends to be a little odd because of course they're regionalized in their broadcast. They have rules about they have agreements with that they won't step on their affiliates with programming. It's worth having all of those if you like programs on them. You may not find everything. What you want the local affiliates. Most local affiliates also have it, and they do show a lot more stuff. It's a little more regionalized. Back in the day, I forget what it was. I think it was NBC. The only way you could get NBC was you got the Atlanta affiliate streaming, and they carry virtually everything with a slight Southern flavor to it. I think ABC was you got the Dallas one. Now there are hundreds of affiliate ones. You can get the ones out of Hartford, out of New York, out of New Haven, whichever one suits you. You just pick and choose. And basically, if you have the generic national ABC app and 1 or 2 of the affiliates, you can probably get nearly everything that ABC produces, along with some extra stuff. Most of the Fox lineup is out there. Most of the Spanish language channels are out there. PBS is out there. For a while, PBS has been on streaming a long time, but they were also very selective about what they put up because they didn't want to step on all of their affiliates that depend on local donations. Now, as far as I can tell, the generic PBS app has everything. If PBS is carrying it, it's probably there, whether it's Downton Abbey or any of the specialized programs. They have worked out the details. So it's all out there. Just all you have to do is look through all of the apps and decide which ones you want. And sports. Back when I gave this in 2017, sports were still pretty much only on cable with a little bit of broadcast. Streaming had not really caught up. A lot of people kept cable for that reason, to keep, because they had to catch every Patriots game, every Red Sox game. Now with the league, each of the leagues has its own streaming channel. MLB TV was the first one. They put every single MLB game on streaming probably close to 10 years ago. There are blackouts. When we moved to Connecticut, my wife was a Red Sox fan. I was a Giants fan, so I got MLB TV so I could keep up with the Giants. Horrible schedule, of course, when you go that direction. But it turned out that Connecticut is within the blackout zone for Boston, so they didn't show any home games. So there are holes in it. But by the time you add the league channel, things like New England Sports Network, add one of the Fox Network things, these are all available. They are paid channels. And when you add local broadcast channel and things, you can get nearly everything. It's not really worth keeping cable because you might miss a few games. And I know it's probably heresy to some of you, but you can keep cable for and reduce it to whatever brings you sports and do everything else. But generally, yes, sports are out there. They're completely available, far more than they used to be. Even Amazon, Amazon Prime carries one football game a week. The Thursday Night Football is available through a live channel on Amazon Prime. So it's like it's always been. You kind of have to chase it around the channels, but you can get all the games if you want them. And that's pretty much everything on basically the basic part of what I wanted to cover. Basically, you've got an OTA antenna now, so you've got those channels. You got good internet, which brings you a lot of good things. You got a streaming device, and you found all your channels. So there you go. The other thing you might get from your cable company is phone service, and it isn't like the old days where you either got it from Ma Bell or you didn't get it from anybody. All your cable company is doing, they're an internet phone provider. There are many, many internet phone providers out there. You can switch to somebody who is better, cheaper, faster. The one I recommend, if you still do have a landline through cable and you want to read your cable package, I would recommend you go to Vonage. I had them for many years. They're one of the best. I'm in telecom, and they're one of the best phone companies I've ever had. The service was flawless. They have things like they have a web page. You open a web page, and you can control every aspect of your voicemail and you can block people. You can keep blocking Rachel no matter how many numbers she calls on. It's a wonderful service. It's not the cheapest, but it's cheaper than cable, and it is absolutely, it's a good place to start if you want to move, if you want your cable and keep a landline. There's other ones. Broad Voice is another one. There's many out there. You can do your own research on it, choose who you want to go with. The other services are what I call gadget-based. Everybody's heard of Magic Jack. Plug it in and it gives you free phone service forever. The upscale version is Uma. And the problem with that is, first of all, they're not free anymore. The FCC got on them for not paying things like regulatory fees and contributing to the E911 network and stuff. So now you buy a Magic Jack and you have free phone service, except that you get a bill for $5 every month. So really the advantage is really kind of gone. And also when they sell you a gadget and then you never pay them anything else, they don't really have much motivation to keep the service up. If you're going to do this, I would recommend going with a service-based company because, of course, if they don't keep the service up, you're going to switch. So they do try a little harder. They are real phone companies. You can transfer your existing number usually. They have every feature. They have great voicemail. Like one of the things Vonage has is something that you only tend to find for extra cost on cell phone plans. It has text conversion of your voicemail. Every voicemail you get is converted to text and sent to you as email. And I found that tremendous. I get 10 a day. Instead of having to sit there and listen, I just skim through a text list of it. That made the service worth it. And if you use a broadcast email number, you can send it to 2 people or 3 people. Everybody in the household can get the message as a text and know what to do with it. So very much worthwhile. Yes, you can get good phone service without the cable company. So let's go ahead and do a little sum up here. It really is a lot easier. To start with, here's the whole presentation on one slide. See, I could have skipped all of that, and we all could have been eating dinner by now. Make sure you have good internet service and good Wi-Fi in your house. Buy your own connection equipment. That's the fundamental physical layer of doing all this. Buy a good streaming device if you don't have one. It's much better to buy one of the good devices than it is to rely on even a phone or something like that. The boxes, the Roku box makes it so easy it's a pleasure. You don't have to fiddle around or update anything. It's a great way to go. You connect and configure the streaming. You connect it, which is pretty easy. The toughest part there for some people will be getting it to talk to your Wi-Fi. Actually, Roku is very good on that. There's one menu. It walks you through it with a full menu on the screen. Do this, now do this, now do this, now do this, and it'll test it and tell you whether it works or not. It's about as easy as that can possibly be made. Go ahead and put up that OTA antenna. You guys have free channels that are pouring down on you. Grab a bucket and catch some. And then you just sit down and watch. And that's really all there is to it. Everything else is a lot of the details I covered, but that's really how easy it is to do. So let's go through a little slower. To get from cable to independent TV, the first thing to do is, as soon as you're done listening to me, you can experiment with things you have. You can do it on whatever device you're using right now to connect. You can do it on the smart TV that you never use as a smart TV, or if you have a disc player or a modern game console that has it built in, you can go ahead and fire that up, and you can kind of dip your toes in for free and without waiting. Even if you stay with cable, I would recommend it's worth, even if you have to pay for the service to do it, get rid of their junk and get your own stuff. You may never quite see the improvement, but you will see it in the fact that it won't break on you, that they can't get through into your network, which is, an issue to me. I really don't want Comcast to get through, even if they're doing it at the direction of a law enforcement agency or something. I want my privacy, and you don't have it with their equipment. Drop their cable phone service, drop that bundle, and go with a cheaper, better provider. That's if you stay with cable. And then buy a streaming appliance, buy a Roku, and then what I would recommend, like I said when I went at the beginning, is plug it in and then pretend you don't have cable. Put the effort in, find your apps, find your channels, find your programming. Otherwise, what will happen is it'll sit there and you'll occasionally watch a movie on Netflix and never actually get rid of cable. You have to kind of force yourself to jump off that cliff. Then drop cable for the best internet plan you can find. And then, like I said, now you can consider providers that don't have cable options. You don't care what they offer except for a really good internet connection. So you can find other providers. When you go to cancel cable, you might want to consider taking kind of a nuclear option. If you have a contract for 6 months or so, evaluate that. If that's going to cost you $400 or $500 or more, and they want a $75 or $100 cancellation fee, pay it. You're ahead. I have a long slide on how to talk to the cable company that I can get to if anybody wants to. That's basically it. Basically, yes, you want to cancel. Yes, you want to go down to just internet service if that's who you've chosen. And if they want to nickel and dime you over a cancellation fee, it's better than paying out the contract, especially if you just renewed or are halfway through it. Then get a streaming device for each location. Like I said, you might want to consider a stick for at least a second location, because they are portable. They're easy. They don't have the wired option, so they are the convenience of Wi-Fi. And of course, you can use any device you already have. Like I said, you can, we'll curl up in bed tonight with your tablet and watch a movie or watch a TV program or, watch whoever is doing Tonight Show this week. And again, check out the OTA channels. They're absolutely worth it in your case. My favorite story in this was early on. I think it was an Avon. A guy came up to me after the presentation. He said he had 4 cable boxes. He had one in the living room, one in the master bedroom, and one in each of the kids' rooms. And they had every single premium service there was, HBO and all of them. And all of the teaser rates had run out, and they had it for years. And their kids were going to college. He was paying $450 a month for all of this service that he wasn't using. And he had come that night to find out if he could cut it. I got an email from about a month later. He'd gone to one Roku. His entire bill was $50 a month. Most of you probably can't get that kind of reduction, but generally, if you go to OTA, if you get rid of cable service, if you reduce to the lowest cost internet provider you have, even if you subscribe to a few things, you're probably going to save quite a bit of money, especially over time. Even if you just get rid of the equipment and stop paying the rental fees, you'll start saving money. So that's what it's all about. And if you need more information, again, this is the address. This is my commercial site. I'm a communications agency. Basically, if you go there, that's where all of this information is summarized. All of these web addresses, there's a very short cheat sheet for the presentation. There is also an email address. I'm happy to answer questions. if it's a question you would have asked or wanted an answer to now, I'm happy to answer simple questions down the road. I can't be a private consultant or solve your internal internet problems, but I can answer questions. And this always got a big laugh when I brought it up, so I just sort of have to imagine the laugh now. And these are additional topics that I weeded out. I'm willing to go into any of these in more detail, and I'm willing to now kind of answer any questions. My chat went away here. Let me call it back up. I'll bet it's here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So let me take a quick look here at the questions. I'll skip back to the one of the things that's on that slide about what not to buy are any streaming device from a second provider. There's somebody asked about jailbreak or cracked Amazon. There's a lot of them out there. I wouldn't recommend it for a lot of reasons. One, you're paying for junk, and those the cracks don't work very long. Netflix and ESPN and those guys don't sit still. They're perfectly aware that people are connecting using cracked apps, and they change up and they don't work anymore. So unless you're the hacker who can go in there and rewrite the code, those simply won't work very long. It's just not the way to go. Stealing the services from them is not really the direction anybody wants to go, and you also will have endless technical problems with them. Let me see. If you have a smart TV, you will probably still want a Roku. Like I said, but smart TVs generally they're just not very good. I mean, I have one because it was all I could buy. And I very, very occasionally use it as a browser. And I will mess around with the other. It's just very slow, very clumsy. It's very frustrating. And you don't need to be. By buying a Roku, it makes it even easier than the cable box was. It's really, this is your entertainment. You don't want to sit there and twiddle dials and reconnect things and chase down menus and stuff. You just want to sit and watch stuff. And a streaming device, especially a Roku, makes it very, very easy to do. I really can't recommend hardware. Somebody asked about modems and software. The only thing I can recommend is basically go to your cable provider, whenever you choose, whoever it is. You'll have to dig, but there will be a recommended or what do I want to say, compatible equipment. What you're looking for is either a Motorola modem, or the company that makes them now is called Arris, ARRIS. And I used to have a picture when I can skip down to one. There's basically one model. They're called a surfboard, SD 6141 and 6142. They have been made for years. I have one that is technically obsolete because it only has, the way they work is they bond together multiple channels to give you more speed. Mine is only good to about 112 megabits. Since I only am up to 90 and don't care, it doesn't matter. The 6142, the newer one, goes up to something like 300. Buy whatever's cheap. You can buy refurbished ones, like the cable companies get them back and dust them off and resell them. They are ultra, ultra reliable. I said the one I'm using right now is at least 12 years old. Never had a problem. So that's when you want. Don't buy cheaper ones. If you generally, when you call up Comcast or Cox and say, I want to use my own modem, it's a Motorola model, they won't give you any back talk. If you go with no-name Chinese ones, or there's a company called Zoom that makes fairly cheap stuff, they will argue with you, and kind of rightly. They don't want that junk on their network. So you do want to buy a good one. The good thing is a good one is about $30. A brand new one is about $60. As for everything beyond that, routers, Wi-Fi stuff, that's a whole session in itself. I can't really recommend any. You'll need to get better advice on it than I have time to give you. Let me see, who else? How to avoid streaming freeze? Basically by having good internet. That's the bottom line. If you have a good internet provider that does not restrict your bandwidth and doesn't drop out and has, that's probably caused by the lag issue. Lag is something like this. You're all used to like browsing, and you click on a button and a page comes up, and you click on a button and a page comes up, and you click on a button and nothing happens for a long time, and then the page comes up. That isn't internet speed. The speed is how fast the page comes up. It's the time between that you click the button and you actually get the response. That's lag. And it's bad enough when you're, waiting, when you click on something and you're waiting for the page to come back with the information. For video, it kills it. Everything freezes, it stops. Because the way streaming works is, you might remember the old days when if you wanted to watch a cat video, you had to download the whole thing and then play it on your local computer. What streaming means is they're streaming it to you. They're sending it to you a little at a time. If there's an hour of video, they send you 10 seconds of it, and then you start watching, and it's always a few seconds ahead of you. If it gets jammed up by any reason, it'll stop, it'll freeze. So the way to solve all of those problems you see, particularly for video, is to have good internet. So let me see. Kind of a technical question. Cox is requiring DOCSIS 3.1. DOCSIS is the standard for cable modems. And I don't know what required means in that case, because it's one of those cases where even the oldest one, even DOCSIS, at least DOCSIS 3.0, even possible, will keep working. What it won't do is it won't deliver their maximum speed. 3.1, I think, goes up to something insane like a gigabit. That's what they want. Basically, if you have that and they try to sell you gigabit service, you won't be able to do it. The very technical reason, cable data can only come at a certain speed. This is true of a lot of internet technologies. It's limited to a certain physical speed. The way you get more speed is you use more channels. The older modems and the older DOCSIS things can only bond so many channels together to give you higher speeds. The newer ones can bond dozens of channels to give you very high speeds. But that means the older stuff will work. You won't be able to get their maximum speeds. You don't care. You basically want their floor speed. So you can use older equipment. You almost certainly can get away. They almost certainly have thousands upon thousands of older modems out there, and they only replace them when they manage to talk somebody into 300 megabit service, and then they'll kindly send them a new $30 modem to get it. So let me see. I don't really. I think I've covered everything else. If I haven't covered your question, go ahead and type it in again here. I'm going to skip to the one thing that most folks actually do want to see in this. And that's how to argue with the cable company. You're going to call them up sometime in the next day, week, month, and either reduce your service or cancel it. They have a playbook that makes used car salesmen look like amateurs. They don't want to let you go. They're going to do anything. They're going to promise you the moon. They'll give you free HBO for a month. They'll give you the teaser rates. You basically want to say no. What you don't want to bargain. You want control. The way you get control is by going down to nothing but internet, because they can no longer yank you around. They can't change the channels. They can't change the packages. They can't raise the rates. In fact, rates seem to be falling for broadband now, especially if you go with the lower cost tiers. You want control. Basically, keep saying no. When they say you can't do that, say yes, you can. And when they say the contract says you can't, then tell them to stop the contract. And like I said, if you end up paying a cancellation fee, it's probably a better deal than writing off the contract. So that's how you win. Beat the devil, Chris Christopherson's song. That's how you win with the cable company, by basically not letting them buy you off or deflect you or lie to you. Live news is a little bit difficult. The first place is on your over-the-air channels, which you should get. That will bring all of them to you, all 5 networks. The other way is a lot of them do have apps of their own. You can try all the various major service apps to see if they have what you want. If nothing else, the web broadcast, like I said, for CNN, for MSNBC, for most of those, I'm pretty sure they have now reached the point where that is a mirror of what they send out over the cable and other broadcast things. So it may not be available on a streaming app, on a streaming thing precisely, but if you switch over to the browser mode, you can get nearly all, if nothing else, you can get the major evening reports and programs, if not necessarily the full 24-hour cycle. So anything else, folks? So I'm pretty much out of air, out of wind, and out of things to talk about. I will mention net neutrality. That's the something that was kind of pushed aside. This is the one thing that you want to keep an eye on and insist on. The idea, it's the First Amendment of the 21st century. The idea behind net neutrality is that if you are connected to the internet, you are allowed to go anywhere, see anything, do anything without any preference. If what's been pushed now, this got pushed back, and things like if Comcast chooses to, they can limit you to only services Comcast provides. You can't get to the whole internet. You can only get to what they want. And I mean, after the last couple of years, I don't think most of us have trouble imagining anything worse than having, not only is, the internet selective, in many ways it would be selective literally at a hardware level. You wouldn't be able to get, it'd be like China. You simply wouldn't be able to get to certain information services. This stems from the FCC ruling a long time ago that might resonate. In 1949, the FCC made it illegal to sell a TV that did not tune all channels. If you sold a TV, it had to tune every single channel that could be broadcast. You could not buy an ABC, ABC didn't exist, NBC only or a CBS only network or a local independent thing. Think about how awful that would have been. You would have gotten a great deal on a TV that only got the NBC affiliate. It would have been horrible. So that ruling long ago set the groundwork that basically TV was wide open. You couldn't preferentially sell it to anybody. The internet should be the same thing. If you are paying for internet service, you should be able to go to absolutely any resource, any destination on the internet without the provider being able to limit or control you. So when net neutrality comes up, that's what it means. Vote for it, speak up for it, write to your congressman about it, agitate in the streets about it if you have to. It's extremely important. There are no good ways to record. There's no good ways to record streaming, and there's no good ways to record over the air anymore unless you happen to. What happened was all of the DVRs that recorded old definition TV are, of course, now obsolete, and the ones that record digitally tend to be very, very expensive. They're still in I believe they're still in $1,000 to $1,200 range. So recording, trying to record material off of broadcast or streaming is one of the great holes in everything. Fortunately, most streaming is pre-recorded. It's on demand. But live TV, Amazon does have a device, but read the reviews, folks. There's nobody who owns it who's happy. It only works with their streaming device for some reason, and it's like the oldest VCR you ever owned. It's terrible. So that's something that does need to be fixed. What you could do is you could watch programs. You can watch them on live TV, and then Hulu probably has them if you want to watch the recorded version. That's the best solution we have right now. And no, if you missed the first 8 minutes, all you missed was a bunch of rotten jokes. Basically, you got all the good stuff. Anything else at all, folks? Okay.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was so informative.
I've learned to talk very fast before I get it in. I get to about the 90-minute mark, and I could see the librarian tapping on her watch, and people were leaving, and so I did weed it down. But I think I still have all the important stuff. Like I said, happy to answer more questions. Folks have them. Happy to answer email. My answer might be I can't possibly answer that for you, but I will do my best.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Jim.
Yep.
I'll email you tomorrow.